All right, we are back with another edition of Seminole Sidelines. And of course, I am joined by the Osceola's Bob Ferrante and Curt Weiler. Guys, it feels a lot like yesterday that it was the 2023 football season, but it also feels like it was 6 months ago. So much has happened since the end of the season, but we're really less than 90 days out. But Florida State is getting ready to take spring football practice to the field later this month, and we are here with our spring football preview series. We're going to start with quarterbacks. And listen, before we get started, I was out last night with some friends, Will Gates and Jay Worth, and we got talking about Florida State football. And I think Florida State fans and even myself need to put 2023 behind us and move on to 2024 because we are still having the same debates about the bowl game, the college football playoff, and opt-outs. And quite frankly, I am so happy because, as I said earlier today on Twitter, as a player and a coach or an administrator in college athletics, with the football team, and always got excited for spring practice. There's a renewal of enthusiasm. It's a brand new football team. I remember Skip Holtz talking about the shelf life of any one given football team is 365 days. And they've been in conditioning and they've been in the weight room, but really the football season does not start until spring practice starts. Just tell me, how excited are you guys about spring practice?
I am. I'm looking forward to seeing tour of duty workouts, honestly. On Thursday, they're going to let us out there. It's going to be bright and early, but we're not doing anything on the field. We just get to watch and take some photos. So, but yeah, I mean, there's so many newcomers on this team. I think that's what's really cool yet again is the transfers, the early enrollees. You get to see the new faces. You get to see the strength and conditioning gains and just really how all the pieces fit in on a position-by-position basis.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, I think the combine this week and how well a bunch of FSU guys showed up kind of brought that all back. I think we're going to deal with it again in April with the draft and Florida State probably being well received there. But it will be nice soon to have in the next few weeks football to be able to, watch practice and really move past. I agree. Take those first steps. I think the team's done it. I think it's time for all of us and the fan base to do it as well.
Yeah, and listen, I've always looked forward to spring football, but maybe no more springs than this based on what's going on the last 3 months with the Florida State football program. But before we get started, guys, we want to thank our new sponsor. We've got a sponsor for Seminole Sidelines. Aer Lingus and Anthony Travel have joined the Osceola network, and they are sponsoring our show today and will sponsor podcasts moving forward. If you are trying to join your fellow Florida State fans in Ireland, in Dublin, on August 24th, please go to Seminoles2Ireland.com. That's Seminoles, the number 2, Ireland.com. And as you see scrolling at the bottom of the screen, if you're watching, you've got a directive to that website through FSU Athletics. But we want to thank Aer Lingus and Anthony Travel for joining us today. But guys, let's get right into it. Florida State has going to have a quarterback battle this spring, we hope. It's not what we thought. I can remember sitting here talking to you guys in August, talking about, it was Jordan Travis's team. There's no reason to think anybody else is going to play. Obviously, that played out. We thought coming into this spring that it would be a heated battle between Tate Rodemaker, Brock Glenn, and AJ Duffy. Two of those guys are no longer on the football team. They have transferred to other schools, and Florida State brought in DJ U to compete with Brock Glenn, and then Luke Cromenhawk is in as well as a true freshman. So it's not quite what we were going to thought we'd see at the quarterback position this spring. But just Bob, I'll talk with you, and I want to get both your takes on this. There was some debate, at least privately behind closed doors within our organization and others. Did you hand Brock Glenn the reins coming in this fall? Or was it the right thing to go to get DJU?
I think my concern would have been you risk a step back year for Florida State if you don't bring in a bridge quarterback option. That's what DJU is. And it's kind of weird for me still to see a quarterback on his third school coming to Florida State. But this might be the right fit, the right quarterback for the right program at the right time. What does DJU do well? I think he pushes the ball down the field really well. We saw some really good throws at Oregon State where he was on the left hash, throwing to the right sideline. That's a really good arm strength. He can run. 4th and 1, 4th and 2. And yes, it's the offensive line pushing that pile forward. But there's also a big body in a DJU potentially leaning over those offensive linemen and getting that first down. We know that's going to be essential, is to use the quarterback run game with the other components that are there on Florida State's offense. I do think we want to see a lot of Brock Glenn. To your point, Pat, it's not just going to be DJU is going to take every snap. That's the entire game plan. There has to be something built in for Brock Glenn, for his development, for his progress, because he might be the guy in 2025. He needs that on-field time. But yes, I think we're all kind of curious what DJU looks like with the new receivers, with some of the new running backs. How does it all fit together this spring on the offense?
Curt?
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if DJ Uiagalelei would be here if Brock Glenn had gotten kind of a full freshman season. I mean, I think when you look at it, he in his first action against Southern Miss suffered a hand injury, missed like a month and a half of practice, was out for a heavy chunk of time, and I think that really hurt him. And then he got thrown into the deep end. I mean, having to start the ACC championship game in an Orange Bowl with a heavily depleted roster. And I think the growth we saw from his first start to his second was notable, even if he was totally overmatched against a mostly intact Georgia defense. But I think it showed in that moment that be it the time he missed, be it just, I mean, it's hard even as a redshirt freshman to maybe be ready. And I think, like Bob said, I think momentum's important. I think someone like DJ increases your chances of not falling from 13-1, from a 12-0 regular season to 7-5. You may be accelerating the future a bit, but I think you can prepare Brock or Luke, whoever it is, for the future well having a bridge. And I think they can learn things. I think they both learned things from Jordan Travis. I think they could both learn maybe even different things from someone like DJ Uiagalelei, who's played even more college football. So it will be interesting to see how that's all managed for sure.
And by the way, Curt, you're much braver than I am. I'm not even going to attempt his last name. He is simply going to be DJU.
It's Uiagalelei. It's not that. Y'all are making it a bigger thing than it is.
Too many words. Too many. I can't do it.
Go find my tweet from when he committed about it. It's there, the pronunciation guide. You can listen to a few times. You'll be able to nail it. I have
hooked on phonics did not work for me. All right, so we remember DJU. My most vivid memory was when he took over for an injured Trevor Lawrence and struggled the next year, but he has certainly gotten better as his career has gone on. He threw for a career-high 2,638 yards this last year, and then obviously his last year as a starter at Clemson, completed a career-high 62% of his passes. Now, the one concern I have with DJU is the 58% completion percentage as a starter. That's his career completion percentage. That's awful low in today's modern football where you're getting a lot of now passes and screens. I've had this conversation with folks, and listen, I think, and I want to ask you guys this, we'll get into it a little bit later, but he did not run the ball near as much at Oregon State, 68 times for 219 yards last season, as opposed to 2022 at Clemson, where he ran the ball 142 times for 545 yards. So what do you, if you're going to do a critical analysis of DJU, what is the upside of him? What is the downside of him as a player?
I think the question still is, what version do we see within the Florida State offense? Do you see more of the Clemson version, more of the Oregon State version? I still think Mike Norvell would want to run DJU quite a bit. I think there's capabilities there. Again, we all kind of critique Mike Norvell's decisions to go for it on 4th and short from almost anywhere on the field. But you know what? That's what he is. That's what he does. What can DJU bring to that situation? The kind of body behind that offensive line that can convert in those situations. I do think we see a more of a runner out of DJU. The question as a passer, I think they're going to be there until we see not scrimmages because they're closed to the media, right? It's going to be until we see games. How does he truly look against some really good teams? And I'm not sure Georgia Tech's defense is going to be that great of an example, but until we really see him in these games to see how efficient he is, I don't know that we have a great answer as to his accuracy. Is the accuracy lower because he likes to take some shots downfield? Is that a factor? I think we have maybe more questions. We're trying to figure out how it translates to Florida State right now.
to that point, Bob, I've got his PFF numbers up. And last year, yes, the completion percentage dropped from 2022 at Clemson 61.9% to 57% last year at Oregon State. But his average depth of target, aka how far his average pass traveled in the air, jumped up from 9.2 yards to 11.7. So he was pushing the ball more downfield. That was more, I think, that to me says less screens, more intermediate, deep stuff that would understandably affect a completion percentage. I think it's encouraging. I think when you look at his number of big time throws is another PFF stat relative to turnover worthy plays. I think he took care of the ball pretty well. I think 7 interceptions is you will take that. I mean, you're not every year going to have however many Jordan had last year. That's the anomaly for sure of how few Jordan had last year. But I think he might. I mean, frankly, I think you can say about Jordan last year, as great as he was. I mean, he finished fifth in the Heisman voting. That the deep ball wasn't as great last year as we'd seen it be. It wasn't as consistent. I think that's an area that could improve under DJ. I think he throws a really good deep ball. And like we talked about with running the ball, I mean, you look at his 250-pound frame. He's 6'4", 250, something in that range, I think.
He told us 270 on his official visit, but they've got him listed at 245 on their roster, and he listed at 252 on Oregon State. So somewhere between 245 and 270. Let's call it 260.
And Mike Norvell, knowing he only has him for 1 year, you don't want him to get hurt, but you're probably less worried about if you're using him a bit as a battering ram. And a guy that size, you might use him some as a battering ram in short yardage. You didn't really see Jordan keep the ball much in short yardage. I think he could be a real asset there, and he seems totally open to it. I wonder if that was just Oregon State didn't want to do that for health reasons, for whatever reasons last year with running him, but he seems willing. What did he say? He said, I know I'm big. I'm down to use my body in that way in the running game if that's what's asked of me.
And listen, he's a guy that has gotten calloused up to running, because I know you guys remember this. The first time he played against Florida State, he did not want to run the ball at all. Mm-hmm. And now he's a willing runner who makes really some positive gains. Now, to how Mike uses him in the run game, I think some of that is going to be predicated by how he feels about who's backing him up. We saw what happened when the last member we have of Florida State as a whole healthy team was Jordan Travis taking off with a run, gets hurt, season goes down the drain from there. I think Brock's development, or Luke's development for that matter, although I think it's very highly unlikely that Luke will be a part of this competition. I think it's great that he's in here in the spring and getting used to the flow of college life, the flow of college football, the pace of it, the intensity. But I think a lot of this has how they use DJ U in the run game has to do with how Brock develops this spring and this summer. And let's talk a little bit about Brock. Brock had 2 starts last year, forced into action because of Tate is concussion, and then obviously Tate did not make the trip to the Orange Bowl as they were getting on the plane, which there was much to do about. But listen, Brock did not get to. Brock played not just with one hand behind his back in the Orange Bowl, but he played with 2 hands. Keon, Jaheim, Johnny, Trey. I can go on and on. I think the only position group that he had that was healthy was the offensive line, and they had a rough day. He literally was out there fending for his life. And you got to respect the kid for that. Listen, he took a beating in those last 2 games against Louisville and against Georgia. But what do you guys want to see from Brock this spring? He did not, again, he's playing shorthanded, but I think his completion percentage was a little bit under 40% in those 2 ball games, or for the season. He played in 5 ball games total, 19 of 51 for 229 yards, if I got that right. But what do you guys want to see from Brock this spring?
I think you don't ever want to play a true freshman quarterback in a college football game, let alone 2 postseason games. So let's start there. What we saw from Brock is probably not the version that he wanted to show. The only thing I would say from the Charlotte performance against Louisville, the coaches kind of did the whole, well, he didn't have a turnover. They kind of echoed that line a little too much. He threw too many risky passes based on inexperience, just not feeling comfortable in the situation. There's a lot of things that there are reasons, there are not excuses, to use a Jerry Cutts term. We want to see a little less risk taking, I think, from Brock. Be smart within the offense. Read as much of the field as you can within the pass rush. Make good decisions. I think we're seeing Brock's growth. Again, he's 19 years old? He was a
Yes.
really young 18-year-old on this roster last year. He's only going to get better. It's a patience thing, but also it's the knowledge that you might be the number 2 guy and you might be needed out there, not just in a mop-up role.
Yeah, go ahead, Curt.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what Bob said is dead on. I mean, the biggest thing is I think you want him to be out there the entire not miss any time. I think would be a big deal. I think, I mean, there were days last year where I thought he was the second best quarterback.
Yeah,
I thought
I
there were
agree.
days last year in spring, in fall, where kind of he was better than Tate, better than AJ Duffy, and had real promising moments that. Now, the wild card there is in practice, he's got that green jersey on. He's not facing the pass rush and all that. So you don't really know until you get thrown into the fire what it's really like. And I think that experience, as adverse as it was for Brock, was probably pretty valuable now going into offseason number 2. I mean, I do not think that they made any 100% assurance. You're not going to, in today's day and age, you're not going to tell DJ he's 100% the starter. But obviously bringing in, the assumption is he's going to be the starter.
Yeah.
Now, if Brock makes that a real battle this offseason, if there are days where Brock's right there with DJ, I think that's really encouraging. I think that's really what I would love to see this spring, is him really building off what I thought was a really strong first off season and first game action.
All right, so I've had that conversation, Kirk. I'm glad you brought it up. I had a graphic built for it, so thank you for that perfect segue into, is it a good thing or bad thing for FSU's fortunes in 2024 if Brock Glens makes this a legit quarterback competition in the spring? I've had various conversations with people. There seems to be no middle ground with Brock right now after the season. Either people think he is the guy, is going to be the future of this program at some point, or people think that he is who he is in those games. I've asked a couple of people I respect. I think it's a good thing if Brock makes this a true quarterback competition, because I happen to think the kid can play. I think he's got a bright future. I think he's put in a really, really bad circumstance. He's athletic. He's confident. We saw that when he checked off that play at Florida. Went straight to him running the ball. But in your opinion, how does this, in the grand scheme of things, if Brock makes this, is that good for FSU or bad for FSU? I've had people give me both arguments. They think if he makes it a competition, then there's something wrong with DJU, and I think I'm on the opposite side of that.
So I think I hear kind of what they're saying, in that I think it's not great for 2024, and that DJ might not be quite what you thought he could be. You might not be able to kind of untap another level with him, and maybe you adjust the ceiling for 2024 a bit wherever you had that at. But I think it's a great thing for 2025 and beyond if that's the case. I think it gives you real confidence going into 2025, knowing him or Luke's probably going to be the guy. So you maybe take the questionably bad with the future good there, because I don't think we think this 24 team is contending for a national title. I think they could still win quite a few games. I think the drop off doesn't have to be really severe from last year's 12-0, but it feels like this is a bit of a building for 25 and beyond type season.
Yep. Bob?
I would say buy stock in Brock. If we want to make that an NIL t-shirt or something fun, let's do it. This is a kid who's going to be really, really good. Again, you don't want to put a quarterback out there before they're ready. He was forced to by crazy bad circumstances and in the spotlight games. So again, will he be able to push DJU? Potentially, because he's had the playbook for 12 months longer. I mean, potentially there's more comfort in his knowledge when he walks out there in spring. He's just going to be a little bit more ahead because there's some amount of chemistry. There's some amount of knowledge with what's going on. I'm not going to choose to read too much into those spring practices initially. And is he a little bit more ahead of DJ? Is there DJ needing time to get acclimated to newer receivers? They've all got that issue as quarterbacks. They've all got that issue as teammates. They need those 15 practices badly to figure out where it all fits. But long term, and again, this is a little bit old school thinking, but we always loved that Bobby Bowden philosophy of you're not going to play early in your career. You need that time to develop on the practice field. You need to play against the number one defense a little bit to be ready for what you're going to face on a Saturday. Now, you can't take that philosophy into 2024. I get it. But having this bridge quarterback allows you to give Brock that developmental time that he desperately needs on a practice field. But again, give him a formula, give him an opportunity to play in some of these lesser Saturday games this fall. Know that there needs to be a set of plays where Brock can excel on the field in the bright lights, and he can have those positive moments. He needs all of that for his development and growth.
Well, and I think you're right. I think you hit on something very key there, Bob. He's going to have to play in the season to make this advancement that people want to see, because the way they teams practice today, you've mentioned that they're not live. The quarterbacks are not live except for maybe one scrimmage out of the entire season. So quarterbacks are not developed in live speed. 25 years ago, you had 300 play scrimmages where everybody was live. They don't practice like that anymore. When the devil's advocate is Brock needs another year to develop, you're not going to see true development and growth until he's actually facing live bullets. He's going to go through growing pains either in 2024 or 2025. Now, maybe you get him in. I think the key, as you said, Bob, is to get him into enough games where he gets 100 passes under his belt over the course of the season. You can't just be mop-up duty. He's got to come in and be able to throw the ball, even if it is a blowout. You got to get him developed. And we saw him very much this season in the first 3 games he played in. He didn't throw the ball. He came in and handed the ball off. So you've got to get him in the passing game, unless you decide to go live more with the young quarterbacks in practice. He's got to get the snaps, and I'm not saying that the game's got to be on the line, but you've got to get him some reps in live action, third, fourth quarter in a 21-point ball game as opposed to a 42-point ball game. I think he's got to be, and you've got to let him throw the ball, develop his timing, because we saw some of that when he got in there. You could tell that they had, he had not had a lot of time with, when they got to the Orange Bowl, nobody had a lot of time with anybody. It was stranger throwing to a bunch of strangers. Anyway, so I think you're right there, Bob. And let's move on to Luke. We've known a lot. We've heard about Luke, and you can't let a person's personality affect the way you evaluate him on the field or anything like that. But Luke has been a guy that's been very fun to get to know. He's been the spokesperson for this particular class that just signed with Mike Norvell. I think I'm looking forward to seeing how he interacts with his teammates and his personality and demeanor on the field as much as I am any physical attribute that he has, because he's kind of been a guy that's kind of gathered up this 24 class and took a leadership. But either physically or just from a demeanor standpoint, how he looks potential-wise, what do you want to see from Luke this spring?
I think you want to see what you touched on, the leadership. Is he able to kind of get into the huddle, execute a play, make the right decision, make the right read, accept the mistakes along the way? His athleticism could be fun too. We all kind of know he was not a quarterback to start his high school career. He was behind Garner, the Auburn quarterback at his high school in Savannah. So he didn't have the traditional, I was a 4-year starting quarterback in high school type of resume. He's an athlete. Can he run? What can he do beyond just being a guy who throws the football? I'm very curious, but again, this is the beauty of being a quarterback in this era of college football. Enroll early, learn, get ahead.
All right, go ahead, Curt.
I'm just excited to see the arm. It's the arm, frankly, that made Florida State offer him before he'd started a game at quarterback in high school. He committed before he started a game at quarterback in high school. I think even as a freshman that was evident. And he had, 2 of the 3 days out at Elite 11 were really good days for him against the best quarterbacks in the country. He still made Elite 11 even after I know the pro day didn't go especially well for him. But we've talked to him so many times as a recruit. He's talked about his excitement to be here. I'm excited to see all aspects of him here. Like you said, how he takes to the leadership stuff that you kind of have to do with the quarterback position, but on the field too, how does he perform? Are there early returns of you're not going to cast judgment on next year's quarterback battle off of this spring totally, but I'm interested to see, does Luke look like a guy who could contend next year, or is Brock a good head and shoulders above him where it's like Luke's got some work to do if that's going to be a true quarterback battle next year?
All right. Let me ask you guys this, and I'm just thinking about it. Where I was going to ask this question or not when we started, but I do want to ask, just because we are talking about quarterbacks, and it's very quarterback. Obviously, college football is quarterback centric, as is NFL these days. But how important is it that one of these two kids that Florida State has signed develops, either Brock or Luke? We've seen Chuba leave the program. We've seen AJ Duffy leave the program, and how important is it that Florida State shows that it can develop a quarterback that it's signed, that Mike and his staff have signed?
I mean, I'm giving them pretty much all the Jordan Travis development. Like, I miss me with the narrative that they haven't developed a quarterback, because Jordan, even if they didn't sign him, they pretty much all of the improvement. I mean, they made him a guy he was.
Yeah, my question was specific. How important is it they develop a high school quarterback?
You're right.
Yeah.
I think one of these two becoming the guy next year is fairly important, because, you don't want that narrative to get out there. And I have some confidence one of them will be. I do feel pretty confident about that they're not going to be in the portal market again next offseason. But no, I think it is important, because you don't want to present what could be negative recruiting points, for sure. I mean, from other coaching staffs, with as you're going after more and more kind of the big boys of the class. I mean, I know they have their 25 quarterback locked up, but they're looking at some other 25 guys and 26 and beyond.
Yep. Yeah. I just Bob, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think typically I would be of the school of, build around your developed high school signing quarterback with, say, a transfer piece on the offensive line or a transfer receiver. Like, complement what your developed quarterback has and build around him. But in this situation, I think we all kind of see there is a need for that bridge, just because of the turnover. And everybody's facing this turnover around the country.
Yep.
I mean, everybody's going to sign quarterbacks. And if you are not getting playing time, the NIL opportunities, the tampering that goes on, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything at Southern Miss or San Diego State. I'm just saying its opportunity is going to be met with, oh, I can go there and play now.
Well, Bob, you won't say it, but I will. Everybody tampers when it comes to the portal. Whether it's through third-party channels, these communications are not happening after kids hit the portal. It's just, I've been around the game too long. That's not how it works. So that's how transfers are back in the old days, when there was no tampering. A kid called his high school coach and said, "Hey, reach out to USF. I want to transfer from Georgia to USF." That's how that stuff works. But yeah, listen, there's some community. Now, I'm not saying it's direct communication, but these guys have a fairly good idea of where they're going to end up before they even get in the portal, just because of past relationships. And I've always said the handshakes post game these days with the transfer portal are certainly a lot different than they were back in the old day, when somebody's going to have to sit out a year. Hey, you're not playing enough here. Why don't you come up, give me a call after the season? Let's talk. So I can only imagine. All right. So listen, we think that at the very least, when the depth chart is announced, if Mike releases one for the start of spring practice, we think that
they don't normally.
Yeah, we believe that we'll see Brock take the first snap the first day. Because he did start the last two games of the season. We've seen Mike do that with other portal situations where the incumbent or returning starter starts out spring practice as the starter, and obviously then it's transitioned over. We've seen that with multiple players. But that being said, if you had to predict right now, who's going to be the starting quarterback? Because it feels weird not to say Jordan Travis is not the starting quarterback. It seems like he was here for 8 years. And I know COVID, you got an extra year for that and all that kind of stuff. But who do you think is a starting quarterback coming out of spring practice? I think we all agree.
It's DJ. As long as he's healthy, it's DJ.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, I agree. It's DJ with a plan for Brock moving forward.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, it's going to be it's not the battle we thought we were going to see in August, but it's certainly going to be fun to watch. And obviously, you've got you brought in Trevor Jackson as well as kind of an added bonus, a 4-star guy as a walk-on from Orlando. So we'll get to see him a little bit. He was an Elite 11 guy, I believe, at one point in his career, and nobody really understood how. I guess he just wanted to come to Florida, didn't want to leave the state. And decided to come to Florida State. Then, of course, you've got a FSU legacy. Michael Grant as a walk-on, he'll be back, and Dylan McNamara. So it'll be fun to watch these guys as they continue to grow. And, of course, we will be back later on in the week with our running back preview on Seminole sidelines for the FSU running backs, and we will also break down every position moving forward. But we do want to thank Aer Lingus and Anthony Travel for sponsoring today's show. Again, if you want to join your fellow Florida State fans on a trip you won't soon forget, game tickets for the August 24th matchup are now available through Florida State Athletics and selling fast. Visit SeminolesToIreland.com. Seminoles, the number 2, Ireland.com. If you want to go check out Florida State and Georgia Tech and join Curt over there at some dive bar in Dublin. I hope Curt sends us pictures and lets us know how he's doing over there. But we look forward to bringing you more coverage of football, Florida State spring football. But guys, appreciate you joining me to talk about the quarterbacks, and it's going to be it's a new era in Florida State football. Jordan Travis has had this team for a while, and as we well know, it's the biggest piece of the puzzle in the college football team, and look forward to seeing what DJ, Brock, and Luke have to offer over the 15 days of spring practice. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for watching. For more Florida State recruiting interviews, post-game press conferences, and insider podcasts, make sure you are subscribed to the Osceola YouTube channel and turn on post notifications so you don't miss any uploads. For daily Florida State content and news, make sure you go to theosceola.com or floridastate.rivals.com.